So this is really an honor and a privilege, and I'm so excited to talk to you about my favorite topic, branding. And of course, the theme of this conference is all about innovation. And we had some very exciting knowledge and examples this morning all about innovation and ways to create an innovative product. But listen, guys, that's only step one. Step one is creating the innovation and building a successful company. What I'm here to talk to you about is about step two. What is the second step that's essential for a successful innovation? Branding the innovation. Branding the innovation. And let me show you and talk about it, some examples. The first high-capacity MP3 player in the market, the Creative Nomad Jukebox, introduced in January 2000 by Creative Technology. This innovation, in my opinion, the biggest innovation of a decade. They had the innovation, they weren't able to brand it. Creative made two critical mistakes. Get your pens out, write this down so you guys don't do it too. The brand name was too long. Customers don't talk like this. They can't have a long brand name. It's hard to remember, say, tweet about, everything. Number two mistake you do not want to make is that the creative brand was heavily line extended. That means they used one name, creative, on way too many products, diminishing its power. Apple introduced the iPod 21 months later. That's a huge head start that Creative had. But Apple was the big winner because Creative got on the market, but Apple got in the mind. You build brands by getting in the mind. You build successful companies by having brands that get in the mind. That's exactly what Steve Jobs did with the iPod. The iPod didn't make a mistake of having a complex name like Creative. They had a simple name, iPod. Simple name. And they combined that with a brilliant visual and an effective slogan. At the time, everyone had flash music players. They've had a few songs, they were cheap. How are you going to effectively communicate the difference of an expensive hard drive music player? With a slogan like this, 1,000 songs in your pocket, specific, powerful, memorable. The result, I think we all know this, it was a roaring success. You can take and combine it with branding to build a strong brand. The first law of branding, brand names need to be simple. The second law of branding, one of my favorite laws, focus. As a matter of fact, narrow the focus. That's what builds a brand. Sometimes that's even what finds innovation. How does focusing work? Well, let me give you an example. Take Marlboro cigarettes. Before Marlboro was launched, you always want to find out what companies did to become successful. What did Marlboro do? Well, at the time, before Marlboro was launched, there was many brands on the marketplace, and each of them at that time were going after both men and women, unisex. Here's a typical ad from the time. Lucky Strike, just one more. That's cigarettes, I think. Appealing to both men and women. That's Fred Astaire and his sister Estelle. And you see, this is actually a logical approach when you look at the cigarette market back in those times. Where was the opportunity for Marlboro if everybody was talking about unisex? What did Marlboro do? Marlboro narrowed the focus. Forget the women, they said. We're going to focus on men. I mean, real man's man, the cowboys. and therefore they were the only brand targeted at men. How successful was Marlboro? Today it's the world's best-selling cigarette, ahead of Winston, Mild 7, and Camel. Outsells the number 2 brand by 130. The third law of branding: the category is more important than the brand. The brand is like the tip of the iceberg. It's the little part of the iceberg that you see on top, but the reality is that most of the iceberg is under the water. That's the category. You see, Nintendo is a brand, but what's the iceberg? What's the category that Nintendo owns? Video games. That's the category. That's what my kids go nuts about. It's not that they don't love Nintendo, they love video games. And Nintendo owns that idea in the mind. How about Sony? Sony's a brand name, but what's the category? If I told my husband to go to the store and buy me a Sony, what would he come home with? And what would we do with it? I have no idea. You don't know, it doesn't own a category. It's put its name on so many things, it doesn't own something in the mind. And compare the results. Sony's got a full line of electronic products, all named Sony, and Nintendo sells video games only. The proof is in the pudding, or the numbers, as they say. Sony, in the last 10 years, $750 billion. Nintendo is smaller, only $100 billion, but Sony didn't make any money. You don't become rich and powerful unless you make money. And Nintendo built a brand and is profitable. Net profits $11.9 billion. Sony had a loss. It's a Japanese disease, some of this. In the electronics industry, many of the companies have fallen into this trap of not owning a category with their name. And in net profits in the past 10 years, many of them have had huge losses. The fourth law of branding: avoid the mushy middle and focus on one end of the market, not the middle. You see, every new category starts with a single product at a single price point. As time goes on, the category broadens at both ends of this product spectrum. You've got to be ready for this expansion to happen. On one end, you have cheaper, smaller, simpler. And on the other end, you usually see more expensive, larger, or more complex. Take watches. Fashion watches, Swatch, cheap at one end, and Rolex, expensive at the other. Expensive multi-bladed razors, like the Gillette Fusion, and inexpensive disposables. Where's the middle? There is no opportunities in the middle. No opportunity. You've got to go to the ends. You see, consumers either want the cheapest, want the disposable, right? I want cheap, or I want the best. The fifth law of branding: focus. Instead of expanding your brand, instead of stretching, launch new brands instead. Look at the numbers. The most profitable companies aren't ones that have one name on everything. Sony puts one name on everything and they don't make any money. The most profitable companies have multiple brands that dominate categories. The bigger you get, the more brands you need, like Procter & Gamble, and Apple, and Nestle, and Toyota. It's the multiple brands that has made Toyota such a powerful car brand. And it's multiple brands that's going to make you guys build your company into the next Toyota or Apple or Nestle. Thank you so much for your time and attention.